Hello everyone, my name is Matthew Ramirez. I'm a cloud engineer at Nebulaworks. So it's good to be back. This is the second video in our three-part series on Terraform repository best practices. So as a cloud engineer at Nebulaworks, I've worked with a lot of customers who've come to us because they needed help building and managing multiple environments with Terraform. Where environments in this case are supporting cloud applications. So if this is something that you and your team are looking to do, I suggest you stick around because you'll find this valuable. So there are many ways to structure your repositories that contain Terraform code, but today I'm going to be going over how we structure our repositories here at Nebulaworks. And this repository structure was inspired by the need to make transparent changes to multiple environments, and it gives us the ability to reuse code. So without a need to find processes to manage environments, working with teams can often be difficult and sometimes chaotic. So now we're going to move on to the objectives. So today we're going to be talking about the directory structure we use here at Nebulaworks. Then we're going to be talking about the environments we may be managing and their unique characteristics. And lastly, we're going to be going over the advantages that you're going to be getting from utilizing this directory structure. Cool, so now we're on to the prereqs. So in order to better understand what we're going to be talking about today, I suggest that you take a look at the following items in our prereqs list. So the first of those being Terraform. That's the tool we're going to be using. So make sure you guys have played around with it and know how to use it. Next, Terraform modules. We're going to also be talking about modules today. So if you're unfamiliar with that, we've included a link in the description below to the Terraform documentation on modules. Next is our partner HashiCorp's best practice documentation for directory structure. So they discuss how you can structure your directories and how you should. So we've also included a link to that in the description below. And lastly, if you haven't checked out our first video, check it out. That's the first video in our three-part series on Terraform repository best practices. And in that video, we go over best practices for laying out your Terraform configuration files, and we introduce modules. All right, so now we're going to move on to the directory structure. So this here is a high-level view of a typical directory structure that you'd see in a repository here at Nebulaworks. So this repository would contain Terraform code that's used to manage multiple environments. So typically you're going to have a top-level env directory, and this directory is going to contain multiple subdirectories, so these here, and each of these subdirectories is going to correspond to an environment we'd like to manage. So in this case, we have a subdirectory for our dev environment, our staging, and our prod or production environment. So before we move on, we're also going to take a look at the other top-level directory that you'll find in a repository, and that'll be the modules directory. So in this directory, you're going to find n number of submodules, or Terraform submodules, that each of these environments is going to reference. So for simplicity, in this video, we only have one Terraform configuration file here in this modules directory, but you can potentially have multiple subdirectories or modules. Before we move on, guys, I will say that I'm going to be referring to Terraform configuration files as .tf files, because it's a little shorter, so that's how I'm going to be calling them. All right, so let's move back up here to our dev directory. So in this dev directory, we have a couple of .tf files. So I'm going to be explaining what each of those is. So the first one being the main.tf file. We did go over this in our previous video, but if you guys haven't watched that, this is just a quick refresher. So our main.tf file is going to contain a couple things. We have provider blocks, so how we tell Terraform where we want to provision instances in, or what provider we'd like to provision instances in, and our Terraform block, which is a block that we use to actually configure Terraform. So we can version Terraform here, we can configure a backend to hold Terraform state, things like that. So that's what's going to be contained in our main.tf file. Next, we have our module.tf file. So this is going to contain multiple module blocks. So that allows us to reference Terraform modules. So we provide a source, point Terraform at the Terraform module, and leverage it. And most, or actually all of our environments in this case, are going to have module blocks defined that point towards modules that are found here in the modules directory, or any submodules located in this modules directory. We also could be pointing at external modules, for example, modules that are located in the Terraform public registry, things like that. So got that down. Next, we have this resources.tf file. So this file is going to define resources that are specific to particular environment. So in this case, resources that are specific to our dev environment are going to be found here. Resources that are specific to the staging environment are going to be found here. And then resources that are specific to prod will be found here. And the fact that all these environments are leveraging the same underlying modules means that all these environments are going to be looking very similar. And we can reuse a lot of our code. So any extraneous resources or that don't that are specific to the environment will be found here. Cool. So yeah, this is our directory structure. It's pretty straightforward, and all these environments are managed discretely in separate folders. So now let's move on to the environments and their characteristics. So I'm actually going to go here. All right. So the first of the environments that we're going to be discussing is the dev environment. So this is the environment that we, where we sandbox new functionality and create proof of concepts. And this is where all of our testing is done. So a very volatile environment where you're going to have a lot of Terraform applies and destroys. So that's our dev. Always changing, always has the latest and greatest. And it's not static at all. So next we're going to have our staging environment. So that here is a more static environment that mirrors production. So this is like the middleman between dev and prod. So any changes or functionality are going to be tested in staging before they can be released to prod or production. So you can also integrate further testing in the staging environment or more realistic testing or workloads that you don't have available to you in dev. And last, we have production. So this is our final environment. This environment is servicing live applications and therefore has to be static. We always want it healthy and up. So this environment will be pretty, as I said before, static and never really changes. And when we do change it or add functionality to it, we made sure that it's passed, all the functionality is passed through the previous environments before it gets to prod. Cool. So also a quick note, guys, your organization might not have these 3 environments. Sometimes there are 4 or 5. It depends on your org. But in general, we usually have an environment for testing. We have an environment to validate environments to validate those tests. And then we have a final environment that is servicing live applications. Cool. So now that we've gone over the various environments, we're going to be talking about how those environments affect our directories or the way we leverage the modules. So since dev is ever changing and always has the latest and greatest, that means that the modules that we reference in our module.tf file will be local. So the source will be a local file path. However, the module sources for staging and prod are going to be a little different. They're going to be version pinned to a previous version so that we know exactly how the modules will behave in this case. And we're going to be talking about version pinning modules and releases in our next video. All right, so now we're going to be talking about directory structure advantages. So this directory structure is going to give you several advantages. The first of those being the ability to iterate faster. Since this environment or this directory structure is very straightforward, it's very easy to onboard people. The fact that each of these environments is managed discretely in separate directories means that changes to the environment are transparent. So you can easily add resources or take away resources, things like that. Also the fact that we are using modules located in our modules directory means that if I want to add functionality to prod or staging, it usually means I'm just upgrading the version of the module they're leveraging. So really easy to add functionality to our more static environments. The second advantage that this directory structure gives you is replicability. So since it is infrastructure as code, we can replicate this anywhere. All anyone needs to do is just pull down or git clone the repository, tweak some credentials or variable values, and they can Terraform apply, and they'll have any environment they'd like. And the last advantage that you're going to get is the ability to mitigate risk. So along with the code that this repository will provide, it also provides a process. The fact that we have 3 environments that we can deploy off the bat, that means that we also have 3 environments to test changes on. So I have a dev environment and a staging environment where I can validate any functionality I'm adding before I walk those changes over to production. And also the fact that these are all discrete means that it's really hard to fat finger a Terraform apply and apply it to an environment that I wasn't supposed to. Yeah, so those are all the advantages that you're going to get from this directory structure. All right, guys, just to wrap it up, today we talked about the directory structure that we use here at Nebulaworks for our repositories that contain Terraform code. We talked about the various environments that we may be managing and their unique characteristics. And lastly, we talked about the advantages that you're going to get from utilizing that directory structure. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that some of you leveraged best practices that we discussed today. If you guys liked the video, then please like and subscribe to our channel. And if you guys have any other questions about the HashiCorp tools or the best practices discussed today, please contact us at nebulaworks.com/#contact us. I hope to see you guys in our next video. So that's the last video in our 3-part series on Terraform repository best practices. And in that video, we're going to be discussing version pinning modules and releases. So we're going to be talking about how to release changes or functionality across environments. So I hope to see you guys soon.